Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches, Bava, Daf Membeis, and we're starting 5 lines down from the top. And we're going to be learning, not as far as I want, but we're going to be learning about a third of the way down to Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. I will not be here for Shabbos. David Merzel will be subbing in. I don't know what the model is here, if he's doing a chabura or if he's giving a proper shiur. This is going to be with like musical accompaniment. This is the daf. It's amazing. Okay, so that's what we're going to do tonight. And as of yesterday, we had started to try and figure out what the phrase in the Torah means when it says Bal Hashor Naki. We gave a couple of explanations of that yesterday, and now we're going to see a couple more. Tanya, 5 lines down on Mem Beis Amud Aleph. Tanya Idach, we have a brisa that says, what does Bal Hashor Naki mean? It means that Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer Naki Midmei Vlados, that if a shore were to gore a pregnant woman, and that pregnant woman would then lose the fetus that she's carrying. So the halacha is that the Bal Hashor is Naki Midmei Vlados. That's the din. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is like, look, that's really not much of a chiddush, and I'll tell you why. Because Harehu Omer, the pasuk says, Ki yinatzu anashim, when there are men who are fighting. And then the Gemara infers anashim v'lo shivarim. It means that it's men, but not cows. I already know your din. So maybe the words Bal Hashor Naki aren't really being well utilized over here because we already knew that din. Shapir Ka'amar Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says, all right, Rabbi Akiva is saying good. That's probably where the phrase of saying good comes from. Rabbi Akiva is saying good. So the Gemara then says, how do we understand Rabbi Yossi Aglili's explanation of the psukim, of the pasuk that says Bal Hashor Naki? The Gemara says 8 lines down, Amar Rav Ula Bereit Rav Idi Istrich. We still need the drasha of Bal Hashor Naki. Why do we need that? Because, says the Gemara, Sal Kedaita Chamina. I might have thought, when it says Anashim Velo Shvarim in the drasha, when Rabbi Akiva says that, I might have thought, Anashim Velo Shvarim Hadomin La Anashim. It means that there are shvarim that are similar to people. Ma'anashim muadin, just like a person is always muad le'olam. So too, Av Shvarim Muadin, then I might have thought that the din of Muadin would have been that they are chayiv too. Hatam mechayiv, that really, and a tam would be chayiv. So that's what I might have thought. Therefore, Kasav Rachmana Bal Hashor Naki de Pater, to teach us that even a tam is going to be chayiv, is going to be pater. Now, the problem with this piece of Gemara is that this piece of Gemara did something backwards. The way the Gemara seems to conclude is that, at least in the Havamina frame, is that the tam would have been chayiv to pay and the muad would not. So to this the Gemara says, Amar Rava Yitziva Be'ara, the fixed one is in heaven, V'giyura Bishmei Shmaya, and the stranger is all the way floating up in heaven. How can this possibly be? This is just a homily of sorts to say it would make much more sense if a muad were chayiv and a tam were pater, but the way that you suggested it is that a tam is chayiv and a muad is pater, and that doesn't make any sense. So therefore, the Gemara says you're right and pivots to the second answer. We're 1/3 of the way down on Mem Beis Amud Aleph. Ela Omar Rava, or potentially Rabba, Itzrich. We still need the drasha because Sal Kadaita Chamina, that when Rabbi Akiva said Anashim V'lo Shvarim, it means Anashim people, V'lo Shvarim Hadomin LaNashim, but not animals that are similar to people, meaning the din of a person and an animal similar to a person would have different dinim. Ma'anashim muadin, af shvarim muadin. I might have thought that a person is muad, so too a shore. V'kal v'chomer litamin diptire. I might have thought that both tamin and muadin are pater. In this case of goring, the case of goring, says the Gemara that no. Hadar kasav rachmana Bal Hashor Naki. What then was Rabbi Yossi Aglili's usage of the pasuk of Bal Hashor Naki, that tam pater umuad chayiv, that the tam is going to be pater and the muad is going to be chayiv, and that is why we needed to have the pasuk of Bal Hashor Naki to teach us that if a tam gores a woman and Nebuch kills the baby that she's carrying, if a tam does that, he's pater, but if a muad does that, then the muad would in fact be chayiv. Amar le Abaye, I hear what you're saying, but elameata, if in fact it's true, then this brisa is a little bit short because it should have also included the case of Boshes. Elameata, if it's true what you're saying, then Gabi Boshes nami ne mahachi. We should have had a similar idea written by the din of Boshes, where one needs to pay for embarrassing someone. Anashim velo shvarim, we said it would have applied to people, but velo shvarim hadomin la'anashim. But it wouldn't have applied to cows that are similar to people. What's the drasha? Ma'anashim muadin. Just like we know that a person is muad, af shvarim muadin v'kal v'chomer latam diptiri. So I would have said that for sure by the shvarim, muad or otherwise, are going to be pater. Therefore, by boshes, what we should have said, but what we didn't say, is hadar kasav rachmana bal hashor naki tam pater umuad chayav. That's what we should have seen by boshes. But the Brisa did not say that. Why didn't the Brisa say that by boshes if in fact the svara is true? It's definitely not true because if you want to say that it's in fact true, that the same halacha applies by boshes, that we would say that if a tam caused boshes, he'd be pater. And if a muad caused boshes, he'd be chayev. Then the brisa that we quoted at the top of the page, listening, here's what it should have said, quote, Balashor Naki Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer Pater mitmei vlados umi boshes. But that's not what Rabbi Yossi Aglili said. Rabbi Yossi Aglili must have had a svara that only applied to Dmei Vlados, but not one that applied to Boshes. So therefore, Abaye v'Rava de Amre Tarvayu, they both agreed. This is really how we have to understand the distinction between people and shvarim as it relates to the goring of a woman who is pregnant and the baby is lost. Anashim, when it comes to people, Ein ason be'isha. If the woman's damages don't kill her, we're two-thirds of the way down on Mem Beis Amud Aleph. If they're let's say that there's a person, Ruvain injures a woman and does not kill her, but kills the baby, then ye anshu. Then they are going to be held liable for the killing of the fetus, and they'd have to pay accordingly. However, yesha son be'isha, but if in fact Ruvain's damage kills the woman and the fetus, so then lo ye anshu, they will not be punished for the fetus. Why not? Because of kamle b'derabamine. Because if Ruvain kills the woman and the fetus, since for the killing of the woman he's chayiv misa, we do not then obligate him to make the lesser punishment of paying for the fetus. So that's how the Gemara distinguishes, at least according to Abaye and Rava, in regards to people. What about animals? The lo shvarim, but when it comes to people, they will not pay this because the afal gab the yesh ason ye anshu. Even if an animal were to have gored and killed the woman and her fetus, the halacha is he would have to pay damages. Not him, obviously the bailam would have to pay, and therefore hadar kasav rachmana bala shornaki de pater, to teach us that no, that when it comes to shvarim, if my animal gores Rahman al-Islam, kills a woman and her fetus, the halacha is that I, as the Baal HaShor, am completely pater on the onesh of paying for the child. Says the Gemara, you have a misunderstanding in this sugya of ason, of the woman being injured as well as her baby. Maskiflor of Ada Barava, 10 lines from the bottom. Atu ba'ason talya milsa. You're saying that whether or not there's an onesh by the killing of the Vlad is dependent on whether or not the mother dies. It's not about her death. It depends on what the intent is. What does this mean? When it comes to anoshim, when it comes to people, when I am trying to hurt you, you and I are having a fist fight, and afal gav sheyesh ason be'isha, then if inadvertently I hit a woman and she dies and her baby dies, there ye anshu, because I will not have a din of kamle b'derabamine, even if I kill her. Why not? Because I was intending on killing a different person, a man, someone who wasn't pregnant. So if I'm intending on killing Shimon and instead I kill Chaya, who's pregnant, so then that was not what I intended to do. So then therefore, my punishment is not going to be death because it was an accident. Therefore, there's no kamle b'derabamine, and therefore, ye anshu, I'm going to be held accountable for the death of the child. Kiniskavnu leisha atzma lo ye anshu. But if a man were to go after a woman who's pregnant and kill her, he will be pater on the payments of the vlad, but chayiv misa. And the reason he's pater on the payments of the vlad is because he's chayiv misa of kamle b'derabamine. But below shvarim, this would be very different when it comes to people, to animals who gore. Even if a bull is full steam ahead to kill this particular woman, and she happened to be pregnant, and he happens to kill her and her vlad, so there the Gemara says, Ye anshu. I might have thought that there would be death in such that there would be an onesh in such a case for the Baal Hashor to pay for the fetus of the woman. Says the Gemara, Kasav Rachmana Baal Hashor Naki Diptiri. That's what the pasuk comes to teach us in regards to Baal Hashor Naki, to say that even if the animal was targeting this woman, there will be no payments from the Baal of the shore to the woman's family for the fetus that was killed. And v'chein, this idea was also replicated. V'chein ki asa Rav Chagai midroma asa v'aisi masnisa b'yadei kavase de Rav Ada bar Abba. He agreed to Rav Ada bar Abba's fourth answer, and that is how we explain the need for Baal Hashor Naki. Let's summarize, because we've learned a lot of different iterations and different possibilities. We had started out with our question of why does Rav Yossi use the words of Baal Hashor Naki, if in fact the pasuk says ki yinatzu anoshim v'lo shvarim. So the Gemara says because there was a havamina that if a shore would have gone straight on to kill a woman and she was pregnant and the fetus was killed, havamina that maybe the bailim of the shore would have to pay for the fetus. Kamash malan Baal Hashor Naki. That's what the drasha comes to teach us. Totally pater. And that is one additional answer as to what Baal Hashor Naki means, in addition to what we learned yesterday. And two lines from the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Aleph, which is where we are now, that brings us to yet another version of Tanya Idach, another version of what we do at the pasuk of Baal Hashor Naki. It's just amazing that well after Kabbalah Satorah, right? Kabbalah Satorah was 1,500 years prior. It was a long time prior, 1,300 years prior. The Tanaim weren't sure what to do with this pasuk, and we've taken up now two blot of this Masechta to figure out what the words Baal Hashor Naki means. Our academic integrity is so intense, we don't let one thing go. What do these words mean in Chumash? We need to figure it out. So the Gemara is going to try again. Tanya Idach, we have another brisa. Baal Hashor Naki. That what does it mean when if a shore kills someone, we'll see who it killed in a minute, to say that the Bailam are Naki, that the Bailam are putter from payment. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Naki means may eved. Normally, we know that if I were to kill an eved, so then there would be some onshin. If my animal were to kill an eved at certain times, I'd have to pay 30 shekel, 30 selah. Here we're saying you're putter. So says the Gemara, wait 1 second. The name of Rabbi Akiva l'nafshe, Rabbi Akiva should argue back to himself, because this was the response he gave Rabbi Eliezer a blot ago on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis, and you can look back over there. In this case, where the animal is going to be, where the animal was killed, so then if the animal needed to be killed, I should say, because it killed, why doesn't Rabbi Akiva argue over here like he did to Rabbi Eliezer to say the animal's not here anymore because it was killed? You have no tainas. The Bezdin should be the one who has your animal because they killed your animal. So why didn't Rabbi Akiva argue that on himself? Says the Gemara, Amar of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Shekadam Baila v'Shachta. We're talking about a case where the animal wasn't killed by Bezdin, but I saw that my animal killed someone. I instantly took out my shechita knife and shechted my animal. Mahu detema lishtale mine. I might have thought that since I shechted my animal and it's perfectly edible, that therefore I should sell the meat. Kamash malan ho'ler b'aktalahu. Since this animal really was deserving of death because it gored, therefore afal gav de shachte, even though you shechted it perfectly, lo lishtale mine, that you cannot get any payment for this. And this is why Rabbi Akiva didn't use this as an example in this particular case. It says the Gemara, Ihachi, if this is true, then the Rebbe Lazar Nami, Rabbi Eliezer, on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis, when this initially was brought up, he also should have answered Kshekadam v'Shachto. He also should have answered when the animal was shechted. Why didn't he use that answer? Says the Gemara, he could have. 8 lines down, Hachanami, he could have. The Savar, but the reason why Rabbi Akiva still pressed him with this question, even though Rabbi Akiva would have answered B'Shekadam v'Shachto, was because Rabbi Akiva thought that Dilma Isle Time Achrina, the Adit Mehai, V'Nemale, he thought maybe Rabbi Eliezer would have a different and better answer than this one, which was the answer of B'Shekadam v'Shachto. Says the Gemara of Rabbi Eliezer, Nami, Lishni Le Shekadam v'Shachto. Why didn't, in fact, Rabbi Eliezer use this as his answer on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis? Because Amar Lach, we would say on behalf of Rabbi Eliezer, because the cases are very different. Hasam, on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis, what was the case? Hasam hu diniskaven larogas habehema. There, a shore was chasing after another behema, and accidentally v'haragas ha'adam. The shore la bar katala hu klal. There, an animal is not going to be a bar katala for killing another shore. I might have thought that there would have been a chiyuv. Itzrich kra lemiute, and I therefore needed a kra to make us recognize that there's no chiyuv kofer. That was the din we were talking about on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis. But in our case that Rabbi Akiva presented on the very bottom brisa, on the previous Amud of Mem Beis Amud Aleph, because this animal did kill a person and it is a bar katala, the animal should be killed. Lo tzarech kra. I don't need a pasuk for that. Afal gav deshachte. Rabbi Eliezer makes a beautiful chiluk between the two cases. In the case that we learned on Mem Aleph Amud Beis, there the animal is not a bar katala because it intended on killing another animal. But here the animal killed an eved and is a bar katala, so the cases are not comparable. So says the Gemara, if this is a good distinction that Rabbi Eliezer is making, well, Rabbi Eliezer nami vadai hachi hava. Rabbi Akiva, has to agree to this distinction. If it's true for Rabbi Eliezer that the case that we learned yesterday, when an animal was goring another animal and by accident killed a person, there we say that the animal is not a bar katala. But in the case of Rabbi Akiva, over here, our sugya for now, starting at the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Aleph, the animal is a bar katala. Those are huge differences. That's what the Gemara means over here. Rabbi Akiva nami vade hachehava. So how do we understand Rabbi Akiva? Says the Gemara 1/3 of the way down. Ela Amar Rav Asi Hai Milsa mipi de Gavra Rabba Shmieli. I heard a beautiful piece of Torah from a wonderful person. Umanu, who is this great Rebbe? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Bereb Chanina. And what did he say about this? Salka daita chamina. I might have thought as follows: that Hoil, since we know that V'amar Rabbi Akiva af tam shechavel ba'adam mishalim b'mosar nezek shalem. This is something that we learned about a number of blot ago. We've actually learned about it a couple of times. Rabbi Akiva holds that even a tam that damages a person will pay b'mosar nezek shalem mishtalem nami dmei eved me aliyah. He would also have to pay we would have thought he would have to pay in our case of killing the eved. He would also have to pay miha aliyah, because that was what we said in another case of a tam damaging. Therefore, kamash malan, the Gemara says, therefore, kasav rachmana bal hashor naki, and that's how he understands the pasuk. That's why in the beginning of the brisa we had bal hashor naki, to make sure that we knew that even in a case where a tam killed an eved, it is not mishtale min ha'aliyah like we would have said in general, but like Rabbi Akiva. Here, the animal would just be given over migufo if the animal still exists. Omar le Reb Zer le Rabasi. This is a problem. V'hatavri Rabbi Akiva legzize. Rabbi Akiva broke his own psak. Why? Because we have a brisa halfway down on Mem Beis Amud Beis. The Tanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Yachol Yishalem min ha'aliyah. You might have thought that an animal that's tam, that's docile, pays from aliyah, from the best of properties. Talmud kimishpat hazeh ye'aseh migufa mishalem ve'enu mishalem min ha'aliyah. So if that's the case, we can't have this brisa over here teaching us something that Rabbi Akiva already taught. Amarava itzrich. We still need our mar makom. We still need it because of the following. Salkadai techamina. Holo machmirani umachmireni be'eved yoser mi ben chorin, because we have a stringency by an eved, by a slave when he's killed, more than we do by a ben chorin, by a regular person. How so? Sheben chorin yafes sela no sein sela. By a ben chorin, we compensate for what he's worth. If he's a sela, then he's a sela. Shloshim no sein shloshim. If he's worth 30, we pay 30. However, ve'eved yafes sela, if an eved is only worth 1 sela, what do we pay? No sein shloshim. Therefore, mishtalim nami dmei eved min ha'aliyah. So Rava said that because eved, there's a chiddush in eved that we're stricter by an eved than we would be by a ben chorin. I therefore might have thought that over here we do pay min ha'aliyah, because eved is a chiddush case where we have to pay 30 sela, even if the eved's only worth 1 sela. Therefore, kasav rachmana bala shor naki. That's why, according to this version of the Gemara, in the name of Rava, that's why Rabbi Akiva needed the pasuk of bala shor naki, to make sure that even though we know that an eved has a chumrah over ben chorin and that it always gets 30 sela as payment, even if it's only worth 1 sela, the eved. But we might have thought, therefore, that if a tam hurts that animal, then the owner of the tam has to pay min ha'aliyah from cash out of his pocket. Kamash malan, that's not true. And that's why the pasuk has to say bala shor naki. And 2/3 of the way down, the Gemara brings a raya to Rava's approach to Rabbi Akiva and the Brisa. Tanya Kavase de Rava, Bal Hashor Naki, Rabbi Akiva Omer Naki Midmei Eved. And the Gemara says that this is logical. Ve'alo dinhu. I'll tell you why it's logical, and this is basically a quote of what Rava said. Ho'ol v'chayev be'eved, v'chayev be'ben chorin. Yes, you're right. One is obligated to pay for an eved and for a ben chorin. Ma k'shechayev be'ben chorin, chalakta bo ben tam lemuad. Just like when it comes to a ben chorin by a regular person who's killed, we distinguish between a docile animal and a dangerous animal. Af k'shechayev be'eved, nechlag bo ben tam lemuad. The same thing is true as it relates to an eved who's killed. That we're mechalek bein tam lemuad. And furthermore, to double down on our proof for Rava, the Gemara adds in Uma ben chorin shenosin kol shovyo. A ben chorin, we pay whatever his value is. If he's 1 seller, we pay him 1. If he's 20, he's 20. If he's 40, he's 40. There chalakta bein tam lemuad. Eved she'eno nosin el shloshim eno din shenachlog bo bein tam lemuad. All the more so when it comes to an eved, when we are paying that very large amount, all the more so we should distinguish between tam and muad. So to this, the Gemara says, "Lo, that's not correct. Machmireni be'eved yoser mi ben chorin. We're much more strict with eved than it comes to ben chorin. Not like you said that it should have the same rules of being mechalek ben tam lemuad for both of them. That's not true because eved has a chumrah. What was the chumrah of eved? It's like we said earlier. Sheben chorin, we're 15 lines from the bottom, approximately. Sheben chorin yafes sela no sein sela. If the animal hurts a person, he gets paid whatever he's worth. Shloshim no sein shloshim. If he's worth 30, he gets paid 30. The eved yafes sela no sein shloshim. But an eved that's only worth 1 gets 30. So we see that there's a chumrah. Yachol yehei chayev. I might have thought that even with a short time, killing an eved, I might have thought that they get paid min ha'aliyah. Talmud lomar balashor naki midmei ha'eved. He does not have to pay the dmei eved. So now, if we just summarize and go back to the very beginning of the brisa at the bottom of Mem Beis Mud Aleph, I'll just read the brisa. The last line on that page said that Rabbi Akiva holds it. Balashor naki says that you're pater from dmei eved, and that is how the Gemara here concludes, just like Rava. And that brings us to the end of this sugya and to the 2 dots, which is 5 lines, 6 lines before the wide lines on Mem Beis Mud Beis. Let us continue for a few more minutes, and then we'll stop at the 2 dots, a third of the way down. Tanu Rabbanon, what does the pasuk mean when it says Vehemis ish o isha? The pasuk says in regards to an animal that's nogach, that it's that the din is that even if it kills a man and a woman. Amar Rabbi Akiva v'chima bazel lamdenu. No chidushim. Why not? Because im l'chayiv al ha'isha ki'ish, if you want to say that the punishment for killing a man and killing a woman are the same, we already know that. Harei kvar nemar ki igach shor es ish o es isha. That can't be. So then why does the Torah go out of its way to speak about an isha and an ish yet again? The Gemara responds 10 lines from the bottom, 2 lines before the wide lines. Ela lahakish isha leish. This is to compare a woman to a man. Ma'ish nizakav liyorshav. Just like a man, his damages that were in his direction, if he gets hurt and then he dies, the money goes to the yorship. Af isha nizakeha liyorsheha. A woman also will have her nizikin go to her yorship, meaning if she gets killed, if she gets hurt, then the money goes to her family. Says the Gemara, V'sava Rabbi Akiva lo yoris labal. Rabbi Akiva doesn't say that the money over here when a woman gets hurt would go to the husband. The Tanya, we have a brisa that says not like that. What does the brisa say? V'yarashosa mikan shabal yoresh es ishto divrei Rabbi Akiva. That the money should ever go to the woman. It should go to her husband based on the pasuk in Chumash. Right, wrong, or ugly. That's what the pasuk says, that the money goes to him. That's how Rabbi Akiva understands it. So the Gemara teaches us a very important principle like this. Omar Reish Lakish, 6 lines from the bottom. Lo Omar Rabbi Akiva ela bekofer. When do we say that the money that is due to a woman goes to her yorshim? That's only by a din of kofer where she's killed by an animal. Why? V'havale ra'ui. What is ra'ui? Ra'ui is money that is fit to go to the woman, but doesn't go to her till after she's dead. That's the din of kofer. When do we trigger the din of kofer? When the animal gores a woman and she dies. Once she dies, that money goes to her yorship. while she's alive. That's the next part. Ve'ein habal notel beroi kibemuchsa. When a woman is still alive, any penalties that are because of her go to her husband, maskia. But once she dies, any money that comes in after her death, such as by the payment of kofar, which is only triggered by her death, that money goes to her yorship. My taima. Why do we say this? Because Amar Kra, Vehemis isho isha hashor yisakel v'gam be'alav you must, and the next pasuk says in kofar yushas alav. So that pasuk explains to us the difference between ra'ui and muchsa. Ra'ui is money that a woman will be deserving of after she dies. Muchsak is money that she is deserving of right now. Says the Gemara, Uveni zaken lo amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva wouldn't have said this by other damages. After all, v'hatanya, hika es ha'isha v'yatzu yiladeha. If a woman is hit and she miscarries her children, no say nezek v'tzar le'isha. Look at that. The money goes to the isha. So we already have this somewhere else. V'dmei vlados lebaal. Ein habal. If there is no husband, no say liyor shav. Then it goes to his yorship. Ein ha'isha. If there's no woman, no saying liyor sheha. Then it goes to her yorship. If the woman in discussion who lost her children, who miscarried from an injury, was a shifcha who was freed, top of mem gimel amid aleph, o giores, or if she was a giores, then the man is zacha. The man doesn't have to pay the kofar at all. One way or the other, we still see in this brisa that a woman does get nezikin. So it's not just by kofar. Says the Gemara.
The woman was the one that got killed.
What?
The woman was the one that got killed.
That's only talking about a case of nezek. That we're only talking about nezikin. Right. The Gemara is bringing an example from outside of our case of kofar. And what the Gemara is saying is that if a woman gets injured, if I walk over to a woman and I punch her in the face and I break her jaw, I don't kill her. She gets paid nezek and tsar, not the husband, even though she's alive. We wanted to say that a woman only gets payment by kofar, that a woman's family. That's not true. We even have it by nezikin when she's alive. When is that? When I punch someone's wife in the face. There, I have to pay for her damages, but you don't get them. She gets them. That's the Gemara's kasha and Rabbi Akiva. Because Rabbi Akiva seemed to say it was only true after death. Ra'ui kiba muchsak. Ra'ui is where the money is coming to her, but not till death. Muchsak is when she's alive. The Gemara says not true. Because if I go and punch another man's wife in the face, the husband doesn't get the money. She gets the money of the nezek and the tsar. That's a kasha on Rabbi Akiva.
Right, but it was walking down a progression that if there was the Baal gets it first, and then if there's no Baal, then it goes to the Yarsha. Then it says Ein Ha'isha. What does Ein Ha'isha mean? What woman? What woman is that?
What?
What does Ein Ha'isha mean? In the progression.
Tanya, let's learn the brisa again. Hiko es ha'isha v'yatzu yiladela. A man hits a woman and her children are no, it's talking about, oh yeah, it is if she died. She was hit and she miscarried. No saying nezek v'tzar leisha. The money goes directly to the woman, but vidmei vlados lebal. The value of the fetus goes to the husband. And now, ein habal, if there was no husband, let's say her husband died before this miscarriage happened, no saying liyor shav. Ein ha'isha, if she died,
then that's
after the miscarriage. Yeah, correct. I didn't explain it right the first time. Then no saying the Yorsheha, then she gets that money. And then that just brings us to the question against Rabbi Akiva. And on the top of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, just 9 or 10 more lines, Amar Rabba, what was this case where we said the husband doesn't get the payment and she does? It's been the Gureshes. She's Begrusha. They were divorced already. So she got pregnant. They got divorced. Then she miscarried. Then she gets all the nezek for herself or her yorshim. But the regular rule of Rabbi Akiva still holds true, which that he says that if a couple is married, then the only time a woman gets payments is ra'ui, which is only money that it becomes chayiv only after she dies. Rav Nachman begrusha. Says the Gemara, Amre, grusha namli tiflog bidmei vlados. I don't know if she's divorced. Shouldn't she also get a portion of the vlados? They're not even married anymore. Why would, if you're saying this brisa, that we just learned at the bottom is about divorce, why does the Brisa say that the Vlados go to the husband? She gets Nezek Vitzar for what happened to her, but he gets the Vlados and they're not even married anymore? She's the one carrying them. So why would we give him the money of the Dmei Vlados? Says the Gemara, Amar Papa, HaTorah Zachsa Dmei Vlados Lebal, Afilu Ba Aleha Biznus. This is a crazy chiddush, and we're going to see a drasha to this end as well, that the Torah was mizakeh the dmei vlados, the cost of the damages to a fetus and a miscarriage that happened because of nezek, that money goes to the husband, even if they weren't properly married, even if it was pregnancy from znus. My taima, crazy drasha on the pasuk, Amar Kra, Kasher Yashis Alav Baal Ha'isha. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is 12 lines down. Dibur Maskal Bal Ha'isha Boala Kapid, on the one that impregnated her, the one that slept with her. We're not talking about a couple that's married. That's why in the Brisa, even though we established the Brisa Begrusha, which explained why Rabbi Akiva's Shita could still make sense, but the fact is that even Begrusha, the husband, the ex-husband, will still get the Dmei Vlados because of Exeris HaKasu. Says the Gemara, why would you do that? The Nukma, we could have established that Brisa in a much simpler way. It won't sound simple when we read it, but by the time I explain it, it'll be simple. Why did we have to explain it Bigrusha? What we could have done was we could have established it L'Rabba Kigon Shegavu Ma'os, like Rabba where money had to be collected, or L'Rav Nachman Kigon Shegavu Karka, or like Rav Nachman where money had to be collected. What is this talking about? We have no idea because we didn't learn it yet. The Gemara now teaches, De Amar Rabba, Gavu Karka Yeshlo, Gavu Ma'os Einlo. Sometimes he has access to things, sometimes he doesn't have access to things. Rav Nachman Amar Gavu Ma'os Yeshlo, Gavu Karka Einlo. Well, they argue which one is Ra'ui and which one is Muchzak, but there is a distinction between Ra'ui and Muchzak. So instead of establishing our case like Grusha, just say that there are times that something is Ra'ui even when they're still married, and something is Muchzak even when they're still married, and that would still work for Rabbi Akiva. Amri, the Gemara says, because it only works according to some Tanaim. Hani milu livnei ma'arava. This only works for the Israelites, aliba de Rabbanan, within the world of the Rabbanan. Kika amri hacha, our case is Kirebi. Now we're missing a lot of Mari Makomos here. We really would need to learn a full other sugya to fully grasp this sugya, so we don't have the time for that. But that is how the Gemara tries to recommend that perhaps we have a second answer where we could have established our case where they're still married, but maybe it's like Rabbah in regards to collecting money, or like Rav Nachman in regards to collecting karka. Says the Gemara, we can't do that because that's like the Rabbanan, and our Gemara is like Rebbe. We're going to stop right here. You'll pick up with David on Shabbos at Omar at the 2 dots. Wishing you all a beautiful night and a beautiful Shabbos.